Good morning and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. We're so glad that you're with us today. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be the facilitator for today's session with Cynthia Hazel. We're going to be talking about combating compassion fatigue through mindfulness. It should be a really interesting topic. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Cynthia. Cynthia is a Christian and a multi-gifted motivational speaker, inner healer, and retreat facilitator with a heart for service. She has spent her entire career in service to others in both profit and nonprofit environments. In presentations and complimentary alternative wellness healing sessions, Cynthia assists others to regain health and wellness. She is actively involved in the community where she serves on several boards. Cynthia has a special appreciation for the years she spent helping veterans with PTSD and chronic pain to live whole and recovered lives. Cynthia, welcome to the session today.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I look forward to our time together because this to me is such an important topic. And I wanted to start off by letting you know that I've experienced compassion fatigue. So I know you may be thinking, wow, people are able to do so much more than me. No, we're all very human. And that's why this topic was so important to me. I mean, if I surveyed you, I would probably find out that most of you have times of fatigue. And so this is very common for a lot of reasons. Number one, for everything that you're doing right now, for your one you're caring for. And also the fact in the world, we Americans are saturated with news 24/7. So of course, we're likely to all be very stressed out, given the effects of the pandemic, the isolation, losses and changes, political upheaval, fatalities. And since 9/11, we have been inundated with wars constantly happening. And this all is having an impact on us, whether we're directly affected or not. Our stress levels are high because we're watching everything, but what can we do about it? Just witness it. So, in view of all of that, I found a poem that I wanted to share with you. It's called Compassion Fatigue. It's hard to work being compassionate. You give, and sometimes you don't get anything in return. Know that you're a strong person and no less a good person for hurting. It's part of the hardship of caring deeply. You end up hurting a lot too many times. It doesn't make any of this your fault. You did everything you could, and it doesn't make it any easier. You're indeed strong, but know that you too have friends who support you, even if some of us happen to be on the other side of the world. Next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about my background. I see that I need to update WellMed because I've changed things. I'm moving in a direction that I think will be a better service to people. I stepped onto the healing path, and after experiencing 2 major automobile accidents and recovering, and I went through a lot of pain, and I did a lot of learning and growing and changing at that time. So my mission is to help you recognize your value, expand your knowledge, and broaden perspectives. In presentations, I have designed them to meet the needs of inspiration with topics like gratitude, encouragement, mindfulness, conscious breathing, and my latest talk is about how to love others as yourself. You're the focus of my personalized sessions that are designed to give you purpose and to help you reach your own personal goals. And I must say that clients have found the work to be truly liberating. Now, I placed my contact information at the end of the presentation, and I'll be available if you have any questions. So, next slide. I wanted to start off with a definition of compassion fatigue. And I found that it's really about feeling the strain of another person's pain. It's a state of exhaustion and dysfunction that can affect the individual biologically, psychologically, and socially. And that's because this person is experiencing stress over a long period of time and everything that goes with that experience. But I also want to point out that compassion fatigue has a different definition, and they call it exquisite empathy. And that's because you are fueled to provide the care of helping someone else. Even though you're stressed, it can turn out to be one of the best ways to reduce your stress because you are called on to provide a higher level of care. So it was Kristen Valentine, a social worker, who tells us compassion fatigue occurs when a caregiving relationship potentially results in a deep psychological response to stress that can, if we leave it unchecked, cause exhaustion in the caregiver and diminished interest in your own care. And as a caregiver yourself, you probably felt compassion fatigue at some point. It's a normal response to the extreme situation that you find yourself in right now. When you're tired, there's a tendency to want to walk away from the situation. But what I ask you to do is to recognize it, because allowing or managing your own burnout, trying to find that solution, trying to do it yourself, can cause you and the one that you care for harm. Because you're dealing with secondary traumatic stress. Compassion fatigue can eat up the emotional and physical energies required to do this very difficult physical and psychological work. Next slide. So let's look at the fact of who is normally drawn into the caregiving field, and I'm right there with you. They're usually highly sensitive, empathetic people who take on the role of helper. It's common that we give too much at the expense of our own well-being. And research suggests that the part of the brain responsible for compassion can become overloaded. And of course, that leads to burnout. Now, I want you to know that compassion fatigue doesn't happen immediately. It happens over a long period of time. So in the instance we're at today, there are signs and symptoms that you can look for. And this will give you an idea of, is there something that I need to do differently, to talk about, to ask questions? And so here are the symptoms. You may be feeling irritated, angry, or anxious. Your sleep could be disturbed. Maybe you're suffering from insomnia or nightmares. You find you're unable to feel joy, and you feel burdened by the idea of other people's suffering. If your career is on hold or challenged, you may feel isolated. And of course, going through physical and mental fatigue. Then it becomes very difficult to concentrate. There's a loss of pleasure in life. Your emotions get bottled up, even to the point of maybe you're dreading caring for the one that you're there caring for. And physically, your blood pressure can be high. There's a feeling of hopelessness, powerlessness. And in this situation, some people try to self-manage, so they may turn to drugs or alcohol and use them excessively. Bottom line is, you are probably ignoring your own self-care. But the number one behavior that tells you that you have a problem is if you're feeling numb or disinterested because this can lead you to feel guilty. And you can combat this with all the moods that you're trying to pay attention to. You're trying to manage everything. But I want to say to you, please stop, in this case, being hard on yourself. And make sure that you're caring for yourself, not just throwing everything that you have into the care of your loved one, because that can be overwhelming. Next slide. So we've just seen that caregivers sometimes can lapse into compassion fatigue. You're doing everything you can to care for your loved one. And family members don't mean to, but they may be doing this because they see that you've stepped up and are doing everything. So they leave everything in your hands as a provider. And this can result in you feeling, oh my goodness, who's there for me? But take a deep breath. And because each day is a new start, it's important to empty yourself before providing that care, because when you forget to refresh and renew, your problems don't go away and they start to accumulate. So we can't turn away from these feelings. We can't manage while we're trying and put them aside. We're running and going and doing everything else. No, it's something that you want to pay attention to. Because if you do say, no, I'll deal with it later, you might run across the feeling that said, I am so tired of being a caregiver. And now this person has reached the point of burnout. And that's when you feel emotionally exhausted, and the dread of getting out of bed and starting this whole process again can be unbearable. Thoughts of, I don't care, become repetitive. And if you ignore your feelings long enough, everything will escalate. And then, of course, is showing up as a case of compassion fatigue. So it's very important to address these feelings. And I'm so glad everyone is here today learning and growing, because we don't want it to get to the point that it destroys everything that you've worked so hard to maintain: your family, your health, your sense of well-being. So by taking compassion fatigue and burnout very seriously, we can learn quite a bit and go forward with a new routine, and we can refresh. So next slide, please. So where do we start? I'm going to say that forgiveness is a wonderful place, because forgiveness deepens the connections with everyone involved. So what you would want to do is ask yourself, are there any people that I'm having a hard time forgiving? And is there anyone who's asked for my forgiveness or turning to me to forgive, and I have not been able to pay any attention to that? Something to reflect on. So it was Diana Hill in her article called How to Forgive Yourself with Self-Compassion. She tells us, by bringing the goodness of compassion to the parts of you that you have turned away from, allows for your own healing. And self-forgiveness is a wonderful place to start, because it opens the door to a flow of forgiveness. Compassionately forgiving yourself helps you develop the courage to ask for forgiveness from others and offer it to anyone who may have harmed you. So, I came across this wonderful, very simple forgiveness process. It's a technique, very easy to learn. It only requires 4 steps. And I will share these with you and see, we're not ready for that slide yet. and share this with you to see if it makes sense. So first step, we want you to get into a compassionate mindset. And you do this by taking a few soothing breaths and slowing down your mind and body. Second, consider something you're having difficulty with about yourself. Scan your body and find that place where you may be holding on to that unforgiveness. Now, step 3, turn toward that pain with kindness and care as you would a child or a friend who's hurting. Bring warmth and gentleness to yourself and to that part that has been so hard to forgive. Finally, practice a forgiveness dialogue with yourself, and you can say it out loud or write it down in your journal. And here is a great example. Now you're speaking to yourself, so you would say, dear, and I'm going to say, dear Cynthia, I'm aware of the pain I've caused you, and I feel the hurt that this pain has caused. I ask for your forgiveness. All right, next slide. So now I wanted to introduce mindfulness to you, which some of you may know all about.
There we go. Hi, Chris.
But mindfulness being, is there a problem?
No, the microphone just got unmuted and I muted it back. It's all right.
Okay. Mindfulness is defined by mindful.org as the basic human ability to be fully present and aware of where you are and what you're doing, but at the same time, not overly reactive to what's going on around you. Forgiving and letting go allows you to handle situations more easily and then move on to the next without resentment. One way to prevent stressful buildup is with a process called mindfulness-based stress reduction. Now, some of you may know it as MBSR, and I like it because it gives practical applications of ways you can bring this into your daily life. It was created by John Kabat-Zinn, and he is professor of medicine at University of Mass Medical School. MBSR is an effective way to prevent or reduce compassion fatigue, anxiety, and burnout. And I like the MBSR program as it also is showing people how to view life without judgment, without criticism, without self-criticism. And examples include meditation, active listening, and mindful movement. So something that you can use in the moment if it becomes important and necessary that would help you reduce compassion fatigue. I want you to hold in your mind the thought that those who have shown you anger and negativity are also suffering. Then breathe in the wish to remove their pain and unhappiness, and breathe out and imagine them receiving your good wishes. Using this approach will help you avoid being drawn into the spiral of negativity that compassion fatigue can generate. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is the first of 2 exercises that I'm going to be sharing with you. And I like these exercises because they don't take up a lot of time, but they accomplish quite a bit in giving you resilience and an opportunity to relax and to begin again. But in looking at breathing is something that's autonomic, so we take it for granted. We know we're going to be breathing and we don't pay much attention, especially you in the caregiving situation when you're running around and doing all these different things and you really don't have any idea how high your stress levels are. So If you stop and notice, you may find that you are breathing very short. The breath is only coming from your shoulders. There's very little lung expansion. And when you're under stress, some people get to the point of panting, but trying to accommodate, trying to do everything can really be tiring. And they call this process of breathing in and breathing out only from the shoulders is called shallow breathing, because you're not emptying out everything in your lungs. And if you do this long enough, your air in your lungs will become stale because you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide. And that can be very damaging. Not only will it affect your mood and cause you to feel down, you may feel more anxious, but it'll also tell your brain that your body's in danger. Now you're really stressed. Mindful breathing is a counter for that because it helps you regenerate and come back to the situation with love and connectedness. And what I'm suggesting in these 2 exercises doesn't take a lot of time. I'm asking you to, or suggesting that you find a time that the one you're caring for is taken care of, and you can leave them alone for a little bit and go to another room and sit down. Now, don't worry, you don't have to do a yoga position. We're not going to get into anything like that. It's very simple. You'd be sitting in a chair, uncross your legs, sit up straight, and then we'll look at the exercise. I like this exercise because it's a 4, 5, 6 counting method. And it asks you to breathe in deeply from all the way down to your abdomen. You're bringing in the air very consciously in and out. Now, the 4, 5, 6 method for breathing would be to breathe in to a count of 4, slowly, not too fast, and then hold that breath to a count of 5, and exhale on a count of 6. You may be wondering, well, why am I exhaling longer? Because it's very important to empty out all of your lungs and expel all that used air to get ready to bring a new breath in and start the process over. So it is really great for slowing down and calming the amygdala portion of your brain where the fight or flight impulse is located, because that's the part that if stressed too much is telling you you're in danger. So when you're breathing from the entire trunk of your body, then your stress is lowered, healthy chemicals begin to flow, your nervous system is regulated, and that brings everything back into balance. So it would be breathing into 1, 2, 3, 4, holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhaling fully 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. There's a wonderful reason for doing this, because it will regenerate you and bring your nervous system back into regulation, you back in balance. And I'm only asking that you spend 5 minutes a day, one time a day, and setting that time aside. That cuts down the feelings of guilt, because you think, wow, I'm not there, I'm not taking care of everything. No, and it's giving yourself that gift of fresh breath. And by devoting 5 minutes, that's not taking a lot of time away. And as you go on and get experience with that, perhaps you can work it up to the point of spending 10 minutes devoted to this. All right. Next slide, please. So you can see Julie Potiker, a mindfulness expert, on the screen. And she says, do you ever wake up, hear the news on your phone, and just want to crawl back into bed, pull your sheets over your head? Or worse, break down crying over the state of the world? One way to prevent this is to practice calmness meditation. Now, to do this, it's very important to choose a focus phrase. Here are some ideas. You can think, I am loved, or I am peaceful, or I am safe. But for this exercise, let's take the phrase, I am loved. So again, you've separated yourself. You're in that private space, that room where you can spend at least 5 minutes. And your posture is the same as you were using for the breathing exercise, sitting up straight, feet on the floor, legs uncrossed. And we have a phrase. So the phrase is going to be, I am loved. And what I want you to do is breathe that in while you're silently saying to yourself, I am loved. So you breathe in, I am loved. And then breathe out all the tension and stress. Breathe in, thinking silently, I am loved. And breathe out tension and stress. And continue this for at least 2 or 3 minutes. Now, I want you to repurpose the phrase and substitute the name of the one that you're caring for. Let's say you're caring for your mom and her name is Mary. So as you breathe in, you're thinking, Mary is loved. And then breathe out all the tension and stress. And you stay with that process for a couple of minutes. And again, with the same exercise as the breathing, I want you to start by devoting 5 minutes, one time a day. And then later, when you get that down, you might be able to work up to 10 minutes. What I like about this process is not only is it simple and easy to do, but it is especially helpful for those who are coping with the strains of long-term caregiving. Practicing calmness meditation enhances the area of your brain involved with emotional processing and negativity. So once you are doing this, you are beginning to reduce that negativity and bring yourself back to a state of homeostasis, feeling calm and balanced. Also, a bonus for you is once you're established in this meditative routine and you have been doing this for a while, you'll find your ability to forgive and self-accept will increase. And you'll also find it much easier to strengthen your relationships with others and yourself. So at this point, I wonder if there are any questions.
So you can just unmute your microphone and Cynthia will be able to hear you. The chat box is open, so feel free to put any questions, comments in that area also.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate the information you're sharing. I'm not real good at assessing. The beginning of the talk was the signs of compassion fatigue, and I guess the feelings of irritation and fatigue and those things are easy, relatively, to recognize. But I don't really. I guess I have trouble distinguishing something like numbness or disinterest from objectivity. That may seem silly, but I I assess calmness and just pragmatism, and you might look at me and say that I'm suffering from disinterest or numbness. How can I better distinguish those actual signs?
Well, I think also instead of feeling like, some feelings come and go, right? We're not looking at that. We're looking at signs that are accumulation that just don't go away. And it's building up to a deeper topic. And it's to the place of you can't manage it and you're tired and you feeling dread. So it's a combination of feelings that are just not going to give up unless you do something about it. And I think that's the best way to explain compassion fatigue. You
Okay.
would know if you have that case because you would be fighting back just dread of having to continue to do this without a break. I think that would be the best way for you to look at it.
And are you going to, in the process of your talk, get to when you can apply things like your forgiveness process or your meditation and breathing versus actually seeking out professional help? Is that something you're going to talk about?
Yeah, well, actually, I think these options that I'm providing for you would be to do right away.
Okay.
This is a right of way kind of thing to avoid getting to the place where your only option would be one that, has taken you to a place where you simply have to get outside
Okay.
help. These are along the way. That doesn't mean you'll reach that point at
Okay.
some where you want an additional, it's not that,
Okay.
but not getting to is to help stave that off and give you a different routine so that life is more manageable. I think
So
that's
they're
the best way to say it.
preventive
Preventive.
activities. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Was there someone in the chat? Let's see here.
What does the acronym MRSB mean, please?
Yes, thank you for asking. It's a MBSR and it's mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's just a short way to say it. So mindfulness-based stress reduction. And thank you for asking. Is there anyone else? Okay, well, let's begin. Next slide, please. Wonderful questions. And so now what we're doing and what I'm suggesting, I'm glad that you brought that up, Anne Marie. These are ways to live your life so you have something else that you can bring into mind to do as you're going through your caregiving experience. And they're certainly not limited to only putting them into practice when you are dealing with the excessive feelings of compassion fatigue. So one of the other things that you can do as a regular part of your routine as a caregiver is to create a self-care routine. So about self-care, it's like when we're traveling on an airline and the airplane is there, the stewardess says to you that when the air cabin pressure changes, your mask will fall down, put it on yourself, and then turn and give care to the one that you're with. Well, that is a perfect definition of caregiving, isn't it? Because we want you to take adequate care of yourself and not leave yourself behind so that you can adequately feel good about taking care of the one that you're providing the care for. And so there are some attitudes and actions I'd like you to think about. I'm going to give you a few suggestions, and if any one of them makes sense to you, please make note. I don't expect you to try to do all of this as a part of caregiving. These are simple suggestions that you can work into your day. So first, don't be afraid to say no because it takes the pressure off trying to be everything to everybody. Honor your feelings. treat yourself with care and compassion. Lighten up and let go of what you can't control. And finally, have an attitude that says you're replacing anger with love and understanding. So we take a deep breath. Now we want to look at what actions can you take to make self-care a part of your routine. Number one, I suggest that you replace processed and sugary foods with healthier choices, because when you're nutritionally sound, it's going to help you do a better job. It changes your emotions and thinking, and it makes it so much easier. And it's very important to make sure you stay hydrated, and you can do that by simply drinking enough water. And I know, boy, that's a challenge for everybody. We're all guilty of that at some point. Next, treat yourself as a friend. So when you hit a setback or a challenge, no scolding. Okay, just regrouping, relearning, and moving in a different direction. And bottom line, make time for laughter and play. Now, if you need to, and you ask somebody to come in and cover you for a while so you can get out and take a break, here's a couple of other things I suggest that you try. The first would be to find a beautiful park or garden and walk meditatively in it. Of course, you put down your distractions. Just be quiet and walk through the park and drink in the beauty of nature. You know, nature was designed to be there for us, because as we're breathing, then nature takes our carbon dioxide with the exhale and gives us back oxygen in return. So it's a wonderful way to regroup and refresh. Another thing that you might want to do is to play board games or watch funny movies, because this can replenish your energy level. Even taking a tiny dose of positive emotion, like watching flowers bloom, can really help and bring you back to having a wonderful experience. Next slide, please. So let's summarize. It's important to be kind to yourself, to listen to your needs, and do what it takes to be healthy. When you find yourself in a save the world mode, be sure to take time to calm yourself. That way, you're going to avoid feeling stretched and moving beyond your own abilities. Remember to take deep breaths, center and ground, and take time for meditative or quieting thoughts. For, as Dr. Kabat-Zinn, you see on the screen, as he has recommended, it's indeed a radical act of love just to sit and be quiet for a time by yourself. I also encourage you to choose one self-care habit and make it a necessity, and then stick with it until it becomes a regular part of your routine. And when you're stressed, finding someone to come in and give you an afternoon off will be maybe all that you need to regroup and refresh. And then it's very important to devote time to your own recovery, because this will make a huge difference in the type of care that you give. All right, next slide. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging in with me and learning about mindfulness. I hope that the suggestions I've given you today will work for you if you ever do have down times and feel like you are becoming fatigued. And before we close, there is an exercise that I would like us to do together. Now, normally with this exercise, what I'm going to do is explain it to you, because you can do it by standing in front of a mirror and looking into your own eyes, or you can grab a partner and look into each other's eyes. And we're going to do this now, but in a different way. All right, when you're looking into each other's eyes or into the mirror, you want to feel as grateful as you possibly can and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So I'd like for you to sit up straight, close your eyes. And as you're centering and grounding and breathing, bring in feelings of gratitude just as deeply as you possibly can. And then tell yourself, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll give you a moment or two to do just that. And now with one more deep breath, I ask you to open your eyes and return with me for just a few more minutes. So remember, the person you need to appreciate is yourself, because giving is receiving, everyone benefits. That's important for your health, the ones you care for, your relationships, and your family. So next slide, please. So how did that feel to take a short, refreshing break? I hope it was a wonderful experience for you all. And I also want to extend thanks to the WellMed community for the wonderful programs that you offer. Isn't it wonderful to be a part of a group that helps to give you a feeling of connectedness and comfort? And it also is so important to help you remember you are not alone. And thank you for exploring these options with me. I hope they will come in handy and give you an opportunity to refresh, to feel good about yourself, about your own self-care. If you would like to reach out to me, you can reach me on my website at heartsonghealingplace.com. You can also find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And I have a couple of group pages I operate on Facebook. One is called Grateful Hearts, where I write what I'm grateful for. And the second is Hearts on Healing Wellness Tips, where I give tips on how you can live your life and blending with the own healthcare you already have going in place and how the two can work together. So in closing, I wish you well as you master these very important changes that will teach you and show you the importance of self-compassion. Why? Because you're worth it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for those inspiring words and those wonderful techniques that we can all use. In the chat box, you see there's several thank yous for you for the presentation, etc. And no, we bounced over. Before we leave today, let me tell you just a little bit about what's coming up on the Caregiver Teleconnection. We're at the end of the month already. I just can't believe it. But we do have some sessions left this month. The next one that you will find will be next Tuesday, the 24th of October at 11 o'clock Central Time. Dr. Barry Jacobs is going to be with you talking about how family members can cope with sudden caregiving. I don't think we think about that much in our planning, but we need to. And then on the 25th, it's going to be the last in our series of our health and our wealth, a health promotion series for caregivers. That's with Lucy Barralock and Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar. That will be Wednesday, the 25th at 10 o'clock Central Time. Going to be talking about stress management, and what Cynthia taught you today can help with that. So, but I would encourage you to join us for that one. And then Dr. Jamie Heisman, he's always with us every month. He's going to be back on Thursday, the 26th at 1 o'clock Central Time, talking about taking off your mask. That's kind of interesting this time of year. I want to see if anybody else has a question or a comment for Cynthia before we close for today. Just have to unmute your microphone or put something in the chat box. Well, okay. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation today as much as I have. I learned a lot. I went along with your exercises, Cynthia, and I do feel refreshed.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Over in the chat box, you will find the 10th Annual Caregiver Summit is going to be happening in San Antonio coming up in November. You can go to that link and find out more information. I understand that you can attend virtually or in small groups that will be happening. So I encourage you to take advantage of that resource for caregivers also. So once again, thank you, Cynthia, for being with us, and thank you everyone for what you're doing in your caregiving roles. And we will see you next time on the Caregiver Teleconnection.